Happy New Year's Eve. इसको बंद कर देना भैया. Happy New Year's Eve to everyone. Such a sacred evening, New Year's Eve. It's the eve of Navaratri. Tomorrow we begin the 9 sacred days and nights dedicated to the Mother Goddess. And it's such a beautiful interweaving message because the Mother is the being of creation. And as we enter the new year, it's a new creation. And here it is at the time of Navaratri where we're invoking, celebrating that energy of the Mother Goddess. So it's a beautiful time of newness and that presence of the energy of the Divine Mother in all of her forms. So beautiful to be together on this very auspicious night. And we usually begin with a question that's come in advance, but Pujya Swamiji told me that maybe you have questions. Is that true? You do. Okay, wonderful. Shall we start with you? Yeah? I'll read it out loud. Okay. And by the way, for the rest of you, this is an absolutely okay way of doing it. Some people feel very comfortable to raise their hands and say it publicly, and some don't. There's no right or wrong. So for those of you with us for many days, you should know this is also an acceptable way if you feel shy to give it in public. So thank you. If one wants to work on themselves but doesn't know who they are, how can they achieve this? Beautiful. Beautiful. How old are you? 14. Wow. Anybody else wish they were that deep at 14? So the work that we do on ourselves, when we speak about working on ourselves, we're usually speaking about a psychological level. So we say, for example, I've got a problem with anger, or a problem with greed, or a problem with jealousy, or a problem with negative thinking. And we work on that in a variety of different ways. But when you've taken us a beautiful step deeper, how do we know who we are? And if we don't know who we are, how can we work on ourselves? Well, the truth is, the deep core of who you are, that capital T truth of who you are, doesn't need any work. The capital T truth of who you are is perfect, divine, whole, full, complete. We have that beautiful mantra, right, in the Upanishads that we chant in the Arti, we chant it in our yagnas. The mantra that says Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purnat Purnamudachyate, Purnasya Purnamadaya, Purnameva Vashishyate. Now that mantra means that, the capital T, that, is infinite. Infinite, whole, perfect. And this, which has been created out of that, is also, therefore, infinite, whole, complete divine. It's like if I say to you mathematically, what's infinity minus 10? What's the answer? Infinity, right. What's infinity divided by 100? Great. What's infinity divided by 8 billion? Infinity, right? So whether it's 100, whether it's 8 billion, whether it's 100 billion, whatever you divide infinity by, or whatever you minus from infinity, it's still infinity. That's the mathematical equivalent of this mantra. If God, the creator, the goddess, however we identify the divine, is infinite, which of course God is. If God weren't infinite, God wouldn't be God. It's sort of part of the definition. If God only lived here or there, then God would be like one of us, not God. So by nature and by definition, God is infinite. We've been created of God, which means whether you take it spiritually or you take it mathematically, that we are also infinite, that we are also divine, that we are also full and whole. So that's the truth of who you are. And that doesn't need any work at all. That truth is perfect. The problem is that we don't know who we are, as you said so beautifully. And when we don't know who we are, we identify as the bodies. Because that's how people treat us. They say, oh, you are so pretty. Oh, you are so tall. Oh, you are really fat or skinny or macho or fair-skinned or dark-skinned or whatever. That's how people identify us. Oh, you're the smart one. Oh, you're the athlete. Oh, you're the president of the company. Oh, this is how people treat us. And when we don't know who we are, we take our identities based on how people treat us. Based on what our body is like, the size, the shape, the color, how that size, shape, color compares to what the current fad is, what the current models are of beauty or success. And so we suffer. We suffer. Because you can never be, as they say, rich enough, beautiful enough, successful enough. And we see it. We see it in our lives. Doesn't matter how much we have, we always want more. There's always some level of feeling like we're not enough. And so this is where we use our spiritual practice to remember who we are on that core level. But then once we know that, the tragedy is, or maybe it's not a tragedy, maybe it's just an opportunity. The opportunity is that even knowing that on a deep spiritual level, we still have these psychological levels to work with. Just knowing that I'm one with God doesn't necessarily automatically make me anger-free. There's a lot of people in a lot of meditation workshops all over the world chanting Aham Brahmasmi, Soham, I am God, I am one with God, I am that. And then walking out, yelling at each other. S.N. Goenkaji, who was the founder of Vipassana meditation, I remember listening to him give a talk maybe 20 years ago. And he said, it's amazing because we do this spiritual practice of meditation. It gives us this deep, deep, powerful experience of who we are. But it doesn't in and of itself free us of the games of the mind. And he said so many times at the end of these 10-day silent Vipassana meditation retreats, people would feel like, yeah, I'm there, I'm so there, I'm one with the universe. And they'd walk out, and the first thing you'd hear people say is, what the hell happened to my shoes? Where are my shoes? Who took my shoes? So we have an opportunity, in addition to our deep spiritual work, to also work on our psyche. Because it's not the core of who you are that needs work. It's your psyche. It's the patterns. No problem. Kind of notes are good, new questions are good, but I want to make sure that you hear this, because you're at an age. I mean, we're all at an age, but teenage years especially are ages where we feel so insecure. We feel so much like there's so much work to be done. From the pimple on my nose, right, to my hair, not that you have one, but when I was that age, no, I promise you don't, but when I was that age, that was always the issue, was the pimple on my nose. To what my hair looks like, to my friends, to my grades, to my weight, to my clothes, the whole thing. We're so insecure. And so the core that you need to know is that who you are at the deep core is perfect. Absolutely perfect. Full, whole, infinite divine. And we have psyches. And these psyches are born out of lifetimes of karmic cycles. They're born out of what we call sanskaras, or patterns. They're born out of experiences that happen in our childhood. They're born out of the teachings and experience that we get from our parents, from our education, from our culture. And those things tend to not always keep reminding us how full and perfect and divine we are. They tend to tell us over and over again that we're not smart enough, successful enough, attractive enough, constantly. That we're not doing well enough, whether in school, whether in life, whether socially. And that tends to lead to ignorance. It also then tends to lead to greed, because obviously I want more. It creates an ego, a whole false identification. We start identifying as what we look like, as how much money we have. These days we start to identify as our persona online. At a young age, this is, for adolescents and young people, this is an incredible struggle at this age. Most of us had enough trouble figuring out who we are in just this body. But now young people have to not only figure out who they really are, but they have to curate a whole other identity for online. I can't even imagine what that must be like. And so there's so much struggle. But regardless of the size, the shape, the money, the grades, the skills, the abilities, regardless of any of that, who you are is divine. And you probably have this beautiful opportunity to look at yourself and say, maybe I get angry too much, or maybe I take things too personally, or maybe I find myself competing with others too much. And these are just examples, not actually about you. These are just examples about all of us. And this doesn't mean that I'm any less divine or any less perfect. It just means that this divinity has come on earth, this particular incarnation, in this body, of this size, this shape, this color, this family, these skills, these challenges, these struggles. And it's a beautiful opportunity then to look at yourself and realize, I'm not the anger. I'm not the jealousy. I'm not the struggle. I'm not the curated identity online. I'm not the size and shape of my body. I'm not my bank account. I'm not my grades. I'm divine. And to just keep reminding yourself of that. And if you can do that, then you will find yourself much freer of a lot of the stuff that impacts and troubles most other people. And you're still very young enough to keep from making too many of these personality patterns and struggles really cemented. So just keep reminding yourself, I am porn because God is porn. And even if I get angry, even if I fail an exam, even if I get a pimple on my nose, even if I don't get invited to the parties I want to go to, even if somebody's angry with me or I fought with someone, that's on this very superficial level of my psyche drama. I'm still divine. I'm still whole. I'm still full. And this psyche stuff, I can take care of it because there's no need. I can let it go. I don't have to be attached to it because I realize that it's just hurting me. And so you keep letting it go. You keep letting it go into fire, into yagna ceremonies, into water, into Ganga. Just keep letting it go so that you can keep remembering, oh yeah, I'm one with God. It's okay if I didn't get invited to the party. I'm still whole and full and complete and divine. And just keep remembering that. Okay? Beautiful. Yes. More questions. Okay, fun. How can one achieve self-peace without knowing calm emotions? Did it say that? I have to start wearing my reading glasses to Satsang. Self-peace without knowing calm emotions. Huh? Okay. So how do we achieve deep peace in the self, of the self, if emotionally we're never calm? Well, you can't, sadly. They go together. The deep peace, of course, is deeper. But when there is deep peace, there will also be calmness in the emotions. And when there is anxiety and up and downness in the emotions, it's very difficult to drop deeply into inner peace. If I sit to meditate, which is really the best way to find that inner peace. If I sit to meditate, but I'm really agitated, I'm really upset, unless I'm a master meditator, that meditation is not going to go so deeply or so well. It's going to take me a long time to calm my mind. And this is why when we meditate, the first thing we do is we close our eyes. We give ourselves a peaceful space. It's quiet. Some divine image or representation that's there that reminds us of the divine in us. Maybe there's some background beautiful chanting of Om. And then when we sit down, the first thing we do is we calm the emotions. And the best way to do that, the very best way, is with the breath. The breath is your key. You cannot simultaneously be agitated in the mind and breathing very, very deeply and slowly. So if you find that the mind is too agitated to drop into a really deep meditation, it's okay. Take a few minutes and just bring that awareness to your breath, but bring it to your breath as low in your abdomen as you can, below your belly button. And it helps sometimes if you're beginning to just actually put your hands there. And as you inhale, feel almost like the abdomen is expanding. So if your hands are there, you feel in a way the abdomen breathing into your hands. And then as you exhale, it releases and goes back. There's a very sacred energy center called the Sadhishthan Chakra that sits just about 2 inches below our navel. And Sadhishthan in Sanskrit literally means the place of the self. Swa is self, Stan is place. So it's an energy center, the chakra of the self. And so when we breathe into it, deeply, deeply, and it expands, what you'll find is your emotions calm. They calm automatically as the breath gets really deep. You want to sit straight, not rigid, but straight. Keep the spine straight so you can breathe really nicely into the abdomen. And allow it to expand. And then release. And as you do that, you chant a very simple mantra. You can chant Soham. It's my favorite simple meditation mantra. It means I am that. That capital T that. That which is born. That which is divine. I am that. And just allow the emotions to calm, which they will, and they will very quickly. And then you can allow yourself to continue into meditation where you're aware of the breath, not guiding it so much anymore, but aware of it. Still chanting the mantra. And you bring your awareness, that mind's eye, to your third eye center, to that Agya chakra, the third eye. And if you can do that, what you'll find is the emotions become very, very calm because the mind becomes still. Emotions are in the mind. We say things like, it's my heart, but it's actually the mind. The mind is that which goes up and down. It's chemicals, it's electricity, that's what's constantly moving. So when the mind becomes calm, we become centered and grounded, and we become then able to experience the deeper and the higher levels of peace, of truth, and of who we are. And by the way, that working with your breath, that's a tool for all day long, not only when you're seated in your meditation spot with your eyes closed. That's like you're sitting in class, you're sitting at work, you're sitting in the boardroom, you're sitting in a meeting, you're sitting in a difficult discussion. The moment you find that your emotions are not calm, that the thoughts are not calm, just drop into the breath as low in the abdomen as you can. And just allow it to expand on the inhalation and let go on the exhalation. And you'll find right there, it's like it just grounds you deeply and beautifully. Okay? Does that make sense? Good. And then we have one more. Okay. We'll take one more, and then we'll open it up. And if you have any, I'll come to you next. How does one stop living for others and learn to live for themselves? So, no, it's great. It's a fantastic question, because what it shows is, it shows that what we're doing is not in alignment always with really what we feel is important for us. And when we talk about, by the way, when we emphasize service and giving, it doesn't mean that you become a doormat or a robot or a puppet. When most people want you to live for them, it's not their divine self. When we talk about service, it's a matter of serving that divine in others. Like when we say namaste, the divine in me bows to the divine in you. That's what namaste means. So serving others is serving the divine in them. That does not mean everyone's personal ego agenda. If you spend your life trying to serve everyone's personal ego agenda, first of all, you'll never be able to do it, because everyone's got a different ego agenda. And so you're going to have one person saying do this and another one saying do that. This one says dance like this. This one says jump like that. You will be frustrated, and you won't be able to live for your capital S self, which is exactly who we should live for. We're not supposed to live for our ego self, but we're supposed to live for our capital S self. And if I spend my life bowing to samne wale kya sochenge, what will the neighbors say? What will the neighbors think? Samne wale kya kehte hain? Then I can never really devote myself to my capital S true self. And so it's a beautiful question. And it requires courage. It requires courage to have someone not necessarily be happy with you. It requires courage to be able to have someone have their ego drama unfulfilled. And to know that you're living for something higher. But I'll tell you a personal story about this. When I first moved to India, I was 25. I had graduated undergrad at Stanford University. I was doing a PhD in psychology. I was on a path. I came here. It's another long story. I won't go into it here, but I had this incredibly transformational experience. And I knew I was meant to be here. And of course, my parents had very different ideas. My dad very, very quickly, came in support of me. He recognized something very powerful and understood that I was, even though he didn't understand it, that I was living something very, very powerful. My mom, on the other hand, on the deep level, she loved me and supported me. But her ego drama was very wrapped up in the number of grandchildren I was going to pop out and give her. It's normal, it's natural, there's nothing wrong with it. It's what every parent wants, right? She's not wrong for having that feeling by any means. It just wasn't my dharma. And I remember her telling me once, before I officially took vows of renunciation, she calls me one day and she says, so I had a dream. She said, the dream was that you married a very nice Hare Krishna boy from the Hare Krishna temple in Venice. In Los Angeles, there's a big Hare Krishna community in Venice. She said, so I had this dream that you married a very nice boy from the Hare Krishna community in Venice, and you had a lot of little Hare Krishna children. She said, so I want you to know, it's not the Hindu part that's difficult. She said, but don't you think that you'd really like to come back here and marry some Hare Krishna boy and have some Hare Krishna babies? And it was very sweet, obviously, but it wasn't my dharma. And I share that because as much as I wanted to make her happy, it so clearly was not my dharma to walk down that path. And so, in taking care of my capital S self, I had to put her in the position of facing her own agenda, facing her own attachments, her own expectations, her own desires. And the beautiful thing was that through that, the way that she grew spiritually was just phenomenal. The way that she was transformed through that was literally, just extraordinary. Extraordinary. And her karma became such that now at this late stage of her life, she's here back on the banks of Mother Ganga to live out however much time she has left here not in LA, but on the banks of Ganga. So, you look at how that karmic worked, that which seemed like it was not for her in the moment ended up being actually so much more in her benefit on the really deep karmic level than the temporary fun she would have had with a bunch of grandkids running around. So it's a very powerful and important question you asked. And it's one that we all have to balance, is how do we honor our capital S self while serving and helping as much as we can everyone else. And the simplest way is to serve their capital S self. Then there will never be a conflict. The divine in you has no agenda for the divine in me. Then it's just soul meeting soul. heart meeting heart. But wherever you can, when it's no difficulty to your capital S self, serve even people's ego packages. Why not? Make as many people happy as you can. To the extent that you are honoring the truth of who you are. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Okay. So we'll take one last question tonight, and I want to start over here in case you have one. Okay. So one last question for this evening. Yes. One sec, he's bringing you the mic.
So what if the parents were very old and they still have some, like your example, there could be different types of expectations, and you know that they will probably not understand, they're 80 plus.
Yeah.
Then how do you deal with that?
The same way, unfortunately, simply aging does not remove the karmic drama that we are in, the difficulty that we're in. So you deal with it the same way, knowing that whatever they don't learn in this life, they'll learn in the next one. And you love them as much as you possibly can as they go through this. It's all you can do. Just keep loving them, keep serving as much as you can, but not sacrificing that capital S self. Give your time, give your energy, give your care, but don't sacrifice your dharma. And that takes a really refined way of looking at it to understand where one ends and the other begins. But also realize that there's something very powerful in serving our parents at that age, regardless of what situation they're in, that is in alignment with service to our capital S self. Being able to be with them is in and of itself so powerful that it's of great service to us too. So recognize that and allow your capital S self to unfold and blossom in that service. It won't last forever. And be grateful for the moments you have, the minutes you have. And simultaneously, keep honoring your dharma and your spiritual practice at the same time. Beautiful. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening. A beautiful morning and day to those joining us from all over the world. And so much love to you.